Welcome to BioNotes by Alan. Today we'll be seeing about Lamarckism. Lamarckism comes under the theories of evolution. So, Lamarckism was proposed by Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck. So, as you know, this is the name of the scientist. So, his name is Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck, and he's a French naturalist. So, he belongs to France. So, he's a French naturalist. And he published his doctrine of evolution. So, the name of his doctrine of evolution is nothing but Inheritance of Acquired Characters. So, his doctrine of evolution was inheritance of acquired characters, and he published this in a book. Okay, the name of the book is Philosophy Zoologique. Okay, the name of the book is in French, and he published this in the year 1809. In the year 1809, and there is something very much interesting with this year, because in this year 1809 another great scientist was born, none other than Charles Darwin. So something which is very much interesting is that Charles Darwin was born in the year 1809. The theory of inheritance of acquired character, or Lamarckism, can be defined as the changes in structure or function of any organ acquired during the lifetime of an individual in response to changes in the surrounding environment are inherited by its offsprings and keep on adding up over a period of time. So this is actually the theory of inheritance of acquired characters given by Lamarck in the year 1809. So next, after this, we move on to the postulates of Lamarckism. So now we go to the postulates of Lamarckism. There are three main postulates. Okay, postulates. There are three main postulates. We'll go with the first one, which is nothing but new needs. Okay, so the new needs refers to the change in environment. So I'll just write the key points. So it refers to the change in environment which gives forth new needs for living. Then it produces new organs or parts of body. So this production of new organ or parts of body will be in response to the change in new environment. Okay, next we go for the second one, which is nothing but acquisition of new characters. Acquisition of new character, and this is through use and disuse theory. So use and disuse theory is the most famous concept of Lamarckism, use and disuse theory. And according to this theory, organs which are used much more proficiently develop into a much more developed organ, and organs which are not used much will become vestigial organ. Okay, so organs that are not used, they form vestigial organ, which are nothing but organs of no use. So even in a human body we can find some vestigial organs. For example, the nictitating membrane in our eyes. Okay, nictitating membrane in our eyes. Okay, it is near our eyes. This is considered as a vestigial organ. Okay, so now we saw that use and disuse theory. So organs which are used much more proficiently, they develop higher, and which are not used, they become vestigial organs. Okay, next we'll go for the third postulate, which is nothing but inheritance of acquired characters. Inheritance of acquired characters. Okay, in here we see that characters that are acquired during the lifetime will move on from one generation to other. So these acquired characters, for example, the characters which we get through the change in environment or due to use and disuse theory, they move on from one generation to another. They are inherited. So it's nothing but inheritance of the characters. Okay, the characters in sense which those which are inherited, of those which are characters which are acquired. Okay, characters those are acquired through the change in environment or due to use and disuse theory. So that is the third postulate of Lamarckism. Next we'll move on to the evidences. Okay, so we'll move on to the evidences. Okay, so what was the evidence which Lamarck had to prove his theory? So now so first we have giraffe. So giraffe, as we all know, have long legs as well as a long neck. But according to Lamarckism, the precursors, so the ancestors of giraffe were deer-like. They were very short in stature, and due to the climatic change, what happened was the only available food they had were on high trees. So they had to stretch their necks and leg to get the food. So that is a theory and also an evidence for Lamarckism. The second kind of evidence he had was snakes. So similar to giraffe, snakes also had ancestors who were like lizards. So in the kind of lizards, they had both legs. Okay, they had forelimbs as well as hind limbs, and due to the course of evolution, that is, they went into a life which much with more of creeping. Okay, so they went into a life of creeping, and they went to crevices and all these things. So as they went into a habitat of creeping, their bodies got elongated and they eventually lost their limbs. So that is how they consider snake as an evidence for Lamarckism. Next we have aquatic birds. So aquatic birds like ducks and geese, as we all know, they have webbed feet. So webbed feet also, they consider this as an evolution through which land dwelling birds, when they moved to waters, they had to spread their feet, and the skin between their feet became the webbed foot structure. And also in certain kind of aquatic birds, the wings have been degraded because they don't require wings, they just require feet to move around in water. Then we have examples of horse, foot. Okay, the foot of horse, as we know, like the ancestors of horse were again small deer shaped or even the size of a goat. So, and also they lived in a different climatic condition, and due to the change in climate, and the climate became arid, and the ground became very hard, and it was much easier for them to reduce the number of digits. That's why the number of digits in a horse will be just one. And therefore it is much easier for them for swift running over hard ground. Then we have cave dwellers. Cave dwellers are those animals, those are adapted to living in caves. So they have a limited eyesight, and also they have a heightened response towards olfactory, that is a smell as well as auditory function. So this is also an example or evidence for Lamarckism. Next we move on to the criticism of Lamarckism. So when we come to the criticism part, so there are two main scientists who give a much of a criticism to Lamarckism. They are Cuvier and August Weismann. So these two scientists gave much of criticism towards Lamarckism. Okay, so now one by one we'll go to all the points of criticism they had, and they told the following points are not so possible in inheritance. So first one they said is the tendency to increase in size. Say they proved like people who are very much interested in reading and writing, they do not have a heightened increase in their vision. Instead they have even damage to vision. So that is what they said. And secondly, they gave new organs develop when the organism feels the need. So this is also what they rejected, because an organism cannot create an organ when they actually feel for it. For example, humans have been thinking of flying for like centuries, but they were not able to develop wings. So just because you feel, you cannot form a new organ. So that is what they said. And then we have reaction to environment. So this again they say the temperature, the changes in temperature will not be affected or we cannot be inherited. So this is another thing which they say. Then we have the inheritance of acquired characters. So in here there is a very good example for an Indian folks. Okay, so women in India, most of them, they have ear piercings as well as nose piercings, but we can see that they are not inherited to their children, whether boy or girl. When a child is born to them, they are not born with pierced nose or ears. So next we have the famous experiment of August Weismann, where he actually cut the tails of rat, okay, for around 80 generations. So for 80 generations he was cutting the tails of rat, but further he was not able to get tailless rats. So by that he proved that inheritance of acquired characters cannot be inherited. Okay, and finally we can see the Mendel's law. Okay, we have the Mendel's law of inheritance, no, Mendel's law of inheritance, as well as the germplasm theory, again by Weismann. They all were actually a criticism for Lamarckism. Okay, and next we come to Neola Marxism. So Neola Marxism is nothing but the modern approach towards Lamarckism, and also the scientists who approve the postulates of Lamarckism. So they try to prove what Lamarck had said in the beginning. Okay, So for Neola Marxism, again we can name two great scientists, that those are T.H. Morgan and Cope. So these are two great scientists of Neola Marxism. They actually support Lamarck. In here they say the acquired characters are incorporated in the germ plasm. So what they say is the acquired characters which we get through inheritance, they are actually incorporated. So we can write like acquired characters are inherited or are incorporated into the germ plasm. So this is what they mainly said, the acquired characters are incorporated into the germ plasm. And further they were able to prove it by saying that formation of germ cells from somatic cells. So they were able to prove that somatic cells were the precursors for germ cells. So the changes in somatic cells will eventually change the germ cells. This is what they proved. For example, they gave the examples of tubers, tubers which are used for propagation in plants. So that is an example where a somatic cell becomes a germ cell to develop a new organism. And another example is an embryo which develops from a blastomere. Then secondly, they gave the effect of environment on germ cells through somatic cells. The second one they gave was the effect of environment on germ cells through somatic cells. So this they gave example of a moth. They gave an example of a moth called Celonia bilunaria. So this is a kind of moth which was actually pale in color, and due to an environmental effect, due to pollution, or when its food were contaminated with manganese, what happened was they started to produce a melanic variant, or darker form of it. And in future they developed offsprings which were also of the melanic variant or of the darker shade. So they used Celonia bilunaria as an example which supports Neola Marxism. And finally we have the direct effect of environment on germ cells. For this they used potato beetles. So they used potato beetle. So in this example what they this was using potato beetle, they actually heat treated them. So when they heat treated them, what happened was that they didn't produce any changes physically, they didn't create any changes, but in the next generation, in the future generation, they were able to produce a color change. So in potato beetle what they did was they experimented them through a heat treatment. So in the heat treatment what happened was these potato beetle did not produce any physiological change, they didn't produce any phenotypic change, but actually in their future generation, their offsprings, they started to produce a change in color. So through this they were able to prove Lamarckism, that is an acquired character had affected the germ cell, thereby inheriting the character. So this is up with Lamarckism. So we had Lamarckism. It was given by Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who was a French naturalist in the year 1809 in his book Philosophique Zoologique, and this is the definition of his theory. Then we had the three postulates: new needs, acquisition of character through use and disuse theory, and inheritance of acquired characters. And then we had evidences of giraffe, snake, aquatic bird, horse foot, and cave dwellers, and criticism by Cuvier and Auguste Weismann. They rejected all these. And Lamarckism, Neo-Lamarckism was proposed by T.H. Morgan and Cope, with their main aim that acquired characters got incorporated into the germplasm, and they proved it through some examples of like tubers or celonia or through potato beetle. Thank you.